Some rehabilitation clinicians say to me that brain imaging is outside their scope of practice. And that's a really interesting thing to say, because it means that they perhaps think that they're not allowed or shouldn't be looking at brain imaging, or that they're not skilled or confident in looking at brain imaging. Now, if it's just about being skilled and confident, then you can obtain training and then become skilled and confident. But if you truly believe that you're not allowed or you shouldn't be looking at brain imaging, then this is a misconception, and a misconception that will hold you back in your professional development. So let's have a closer look at what scope of practice is. The Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency, also known as AHPRA, defines the scope of practice as the professional role and services that an individual health practitioner is educated and competent to perform. Now, other regulatory bodies have similar definitions, and the two key words in this definition is education and competency. Let's examine them more carefully. In this table, I charted education against competency. So the middle column relates to basic education, the right-hand column relates to continuous education. The middle row relates to competencies that require assessment, and the bottom row is about competency that relates to skill and confidence. So in terms of legal requirement, the only part of the matrix that is required is the middle box. It's the box in which the basic education meets the competency assessment. And it's about obtaining a degree, be it a bachelor degree or a master's degree, and then fulfilling the requirement of the registration body. And that also involves competency in terms of skill and confidence, because as part of our degree, we do clinical placements and we are assessed on our skill. And then we go on to the workplace and we further develop our skill and confidence. But to maintain our registration, we're also required to take on continuous education. Now, in the right-hand column, we've got the continuous education, and it might be in the form of postgraduate studies, such as a graduate certificate or a graduate diploma or a PhD. They are involved tertiary studies, and therefore there is formal assessment that is associated with that, and therefore the competency that is assessed comes under that category. In the bottom right box is the continuous education that we develop with skill and confidence. Educational activities that do not involve assessments. Now, that might be courses or webinars or seminars or lectures or conferences or many other activities. And they shape our specialization and our confidence and our skill level as well. So as I said before, the middle box is the only box that are required by law. But how we shape our career and our profession and our skills is really up to us. What does this mean for brain imaging? It basically means that brain imaging can be within our scope of practice if we choose it to be. It's true that during our bachelor and master's degree, we don't get much brain imaging education, but there's no reason why we can't learn brain imaging and get training in brain imaging and therefore obtain the education part of the scope of practice. And there's no reason why we can't develop skill and confidence with using brain imaging and therefore fulfill the competency requirement of the scope of practice. In fact, imaging is used by many clinicians in various areas. Orthopedic clinicians use many forms of imaging such as CTs, MRIs, ultrasounds. Cardiorespiratory clinicians also use various lung and cardiac imaging methods. Speech pathologists would use video fluoroscopy, swallow studies, again, an area that they specialize in, and not every speech pathologist will be conducting video fluoroscopies. So if imaging is within our scope of practice, does it matter whether we look at imaging of bones or muscles or lungs or heart or swallowing pathways or the brain? It's just different forms of imaging, and it's just our mindset that is stopping us from becoming competent and educated in brain imaging. As a matter of fact, brain imaging improves our ability to care for our clients. It is our professional responsibility to learn brain imaging, because if we don't use brain imaging, we don't give our clients as good care as we can. So I hope you now know that brain imaging is within our scope of practice and that there's no legal reason for us not to be looking and using brain imaging. And it's up to you to educate yourself, improve your skill, improve your confidence so you're competent in using brain imaging.